Welcome back. You're on 7:31 a.m. I was 17 when I moved into the room at the back of our new house in Vermont. It used to be my uncle's office before he passed, and my parents said I could finally have my own space, away from my little brother, away from the noise. The room felt different from the rest of the house. It had thicker carpet, dark wood trim, and a narrow window that looked out onto the forest. I remember thinking it was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, still quiet. I didn't mind it at first. I stayed up late most nights gaming with my headset on, screen glowing in the dark. But that Sunday, just after 2:30 a.m., I shut everything down and crawled under the blankets. A few minutes after closing my eyes, I heard something. A soft, slow dragging sound beneath my mattress. Not loud, just faint, like fabric being brushed by fingers. At first I assumed something had slipped between the bed and the wall, maybe a phone charger or a book shifting on the carpet. I leaned over to check, but the space below was pitch black, too dark to see anything. Still, I rolled back, told myself it was nothing, and tried to sleep. The sound came back the next night. This time I was already lying still with my phone face down beside me, eyes half closed, trying to drift off. That same soft scrape started up again, slow, rhythmic, like something shifting beneath the bed frame. It wasn't constant, just occasional pressure dragging against the carpet, as if something down there was adjusting its position. That sound, the sound of fibers being compressed under weight, it stuck with me. I swallowed hard and after a few seconds forced myself to lean over the edge. At first I saw nothing, but then I noticed something odd. The underside of my mattress was moving, just slightly, like it was gently rising and falling, like it was breathing. My heart skipped. There was no breeze in that room, no draft, no heat vent below the bed. I laid back slowly and stared up at the ceiling, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound. There were small clicks, faint hissing noises, a tiny wheeze maybe. I don't know why, but something in me said not to move, like turning on the light would cross a line I wasn't ready for. Morning felt like a rescue. By the third night, I was too anxious to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined something slithering just inches below me. Around 1 a.m., I gave in and opened a podcast, thinking maybe the voice would calm me. I kept the volume low, just enough to soften the silence, but still let me hear the room. That's when it tapped. A soft, deliberate knock from under the bed, like someone rapping their knuckle against the wood. I sat up straight, pulse roaring in my ears. Then came a second tap, quieter, hesitant. I leaned forward without thinking and whispered, "Hello?" The word came out hollow, like it didn't belong in that room. Nothing answered. No shift, no sound, just a silence so thick it made my ears ring. I slipped off the bed slowly and reached for the desk lamp. When the light came on, everything looked normal. Carpet undisturbed, window closed. I crouched and looked beneath the bed again. Nothing. I didn't tell anyone the next morning. What would I even say? That something was knocking at me from inside the floor? That night I went to bed early, hoping I could sleep before anything started. I turned off the lamp, pulled the blankets tight, and kept my eyes shut. I don't know how long I stayed like that before the sound came again. Only this time, it moved. It began at the foot of the bed, slow and steady, dragging upward across the carpet toward my head. Whatever it was long, heavy, and moving directly beneath me. I didn't dare breathe. It felt like any movement might give me away. My chest was tight. I could feel my pulse through the mattress. Then it happened, a soft push from underneath, pressing up into my back. It wasn't violent. It was measured, intentional, just enough to make sure I knew it was there. I stayed frozen, eyes wide in the dark, until everything went still again. That's when I jumped out of bed, slammed the lights on, and stood shaking near the closet. Again, nothing. But the air smelled strange, faintly metallic like rusted copper pipes, and my blanket had a tear near the bottom corner. That wasn't there before. It wasn't just sounds anymore. Whatever this was, it had touched me. By the fourth night, I didn't even pretend to sleep. I sat cross-legged on the bed with the lights on, and my phone clutched like a lifeline. Every creak of the house made me flinch. The fridge, the wind, the neighbor's dog. But the most terrifying thing was how silent my room had become. It was too still, like the air wasn't circulating anymore. Even the dust felt frozen. Around 2:30 a.m., my phone died out of nowhere, even though it had 40% battery. And the moment that screen went black, I felt it again, that thick weight pressing upward from beneath the mattress. I stood and backed into the corner, refusing to look at the bed. I kept thinking if I turned away, something might reach out. Minutes passed. Then my desk chair, the one I hadn't touched, slid an inch across the floor. I didn't scream. I just grabbed my blanket and stepped into the hallway, praying my footsteps wouldn't wake it. But as I crossed the threshold, something knocked. 3 sharp taps on the wall behind me. I turned just in time to see my bedroom door slowly creak shut on its own. I slept on the living room couch with every light in the house on. In the morning, I told my mom everything. I expected her to laugh, or at least question if I was sleepwalking. But she didn't. She just went quiet. Then she said something that froze me completely. "You used to talk in your sleep as a kid, and you always said the same word. Crawl." That word hit like a punch. I had no memory of saying it, but something about it felt familiar, like a thread I'd buried years ago. She said I used to cry and point under the bed, but they thought it was just night terrors. That night, I moved into the guest room. It felt cleaner, safer somehow. I kept a lamp on, put the cross my grandmother gave me under the pillow, and even sprinkled salt across the doorway. I wanted to believe that was enough, but at exactly 3 a.m. the bulb in the lamp flickered and died. No noise this time. Just pressure, deep and steady, as the mattress lifted beneath me, one side first, like someone was slowly sitting up from inside it. I screamed, finally, and my mom came running. She found me curled in the corner, sobbing. I told her I couldn't take it anymore, that whatever this thing was, it wasn't going to stop. I was 25 when I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of Boulder, Colorado. Nothing fancy, second floor, old building, creaky floors, but it was quiet, clean, and mine. The kind of place you imagine building a routine in. I'd been there for about 3 months when it started. At first, it was just a feeling. I'd wake up sometime around 3 a.m. with this weight in the air, like the atmosphere inside the room had shifted, thickened. No noise, no movement, just this overwhelming sense that I wasn't alone. I told myself it was stress. I was adjusting to living alone, working nights, sleeping during the day. But on the second night, it happened again. I opened my eyes and felt the hairs on my arms stand up. At the foot of the bed, silhouetted in the faint light from the hallway, was a figure. Tall, still, watching. I blinked, and it was gone. Not like it walked away, more like it had never been there at all. I stared into the dark for an hour after that, heart racing, too afraid to move. Eventually I turned over and tried to sleep, but something about that moment felt wrong, like it hadn't been a dream at all. The next night I forced myself to stay awake. I needed to prove to myself it was all in my head, that maybe I'd imagined it in that groggy state between dreams and waking. I left the hallway light on and kept my bedroom door cracked open. I scrolled through my phone, checking the time every few minutes, always glancing toward the foot of the bed. Midnight passed. Nothing. 1 a.m., still nothing. At some point I must have drifted off. When I woke again, the room was colder, and there it was. Not at the foot of the bed this time, but closer. I couldn't see it clearly, just the suggestion of a shape, like someone leaning toward me in silence. I sat up fast, eyes wide, and it vanished the moment I moved. No sound, no trace, just empty air where it had been. I jumped out of bed, locked the door, and checked every corner of the apartment. Nothing, every window sealed, no signs of entry. I even poured salt along the inside of the windowsills. I didn't believe in that kind of thing, not really, But something about this didn't feel like a sleep disorder. Something was watching me, and it was getting bolder. By the fifth night, I couldn't handle sleeping in my room anymore. I grabbed a blanket and crashed on the couch, telling myself maybe it was something about the layout, bad energy, maybe mold. Whatever excuse helped me breathe easier. The living room felt safer, more open. But around 3:15 a.m., I woke up with a jolt. The hallway light, the one I'd left on, was flickering, and I swear I heard soft footsteps behind the couch. Not stomps, not heavy boots, just that bare skin-on-floor sound, slow and patient. I didn't move. I kept my eyes fixed on the TV screen, now black with its faint blue glow. I stayed like that for what felt like an hour before I finally reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. Nothing there, of course. But the pressure in the air hadn't lifted. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. When morning came, I went to work like normal, eyes sunken, nerves shot. My coworkers noticed. They made jokes. I laughed along, but I couldn't stop thinking about the hallway. How the light pulsed like a heartbeat. How the footsteps had stopped just behind my head, like whatever it was had leaned in to listen. That evening, I stayed out as long as I could, closed the cafe, drove around aimlessly, sat in my car scrolling through apartment listings just to avoid going home, but eventually I had to. When I stepped inside, I turned on every light in the apartment. I didn't even try to act casual. I threw on a movie, left the TV blaring. But the moment midnight hit, I felt it, that pressure, like the walls leaned inward, like the space had narrowed. Then, just before 1 a.m., I saw it again. Not in the bedroom, not in the hallway. This time it crossed from the bathroom to the kitchen. No footsteps, no breeze, just motion. Smooth and intentional, like it wasn't bound by gravity. I grabbed the kitchen knife without thinking. It felt ridiculous, but in that moment, I needed something to hold. I crept toward the bathroom, every step vibrating in my chest. I expected a sound, a slam, a breath, but when I pushed the door open, there was nothing. The room was empty. But the mirror, it was fogged, like someone had just taken a hot shower. And I hadn't been in there all day. That was when I knew it wasn't just watching anymore. It was walking through my space like it owned it. That night, I locked myself in the bedroom, knife under the pillow, lamp on. I sat in bed, back against the wall, staring at the closet door. Hours dragged by. I started to feel foolish. Maybe the fogged mirror had a simple explanation. Maybe I'd just been sleep-deprived. But at exactly 3:10 a.m., there was a knock. 3 slow, measured knocks, coming from inside the closet. My body locked up. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stared, paralyzed, as the doorknob started to rattle. Gently at first, like fingers testing it from the other side. I knew that closet was empty. I'd cleaned it top to bottom the day before, but now I could hear something dragging against the wood inside, like fingernails scraping, slow and deliberate. The rattling grew sharper, more impatient. My hand slid under the pillow, closing around the handle of the knife. I counted to 10. Then I bolted, threw the door open, and sprinted barefoot into the hallway. I didn't look back. I didn't grab anything, just keys and adrenaline. The building was silent, the corridor dim and flickering. As I stood there, heart pounding, something deep in me whispered, "Don't go back inside." So I didn't. I slept in my car, parked 3 blocks away, engine off, knife still in my lap. I didn't go back for 2 days. When I finally did, it was just to pack the essentials. I walked fast, didn't let myself think. The air inside felt thick again, like walking through water. Every shadow felt too dense. Every mirror seemed to reflect something just out of sync. I shoved clothes into a duffel, grabbed my charger, my documents. As I zipped the bag shut, the hallway light flickered and went out. At the same time, the fridge cut off, total silence. Then a whisper, not a voice exactly, but breath, right behind my ear. I dropped the bag and ran, didn't lock the door, didn't even close it. I drove straight to a friend's place across town. I didn't explain much, just said I couldn't stay in my apartment. They didn't press. That night, I finally slept. Until I woke again at 3:00 a.m. My phone was glowing, unlocked. A new file had been saved. I hadn't touched the camera. My hands trembled as I opened it. A 7-second clip. At first, just blackness. Then the dim outline of my bedroom, filmed from the corner. My bed was empty. Then the shot turned slowly, toward the closet. That was it. That was the last straw. I threw the phone away the next morning and started looking for places out of state. I was 14 the night I stayed over at Maggie's house, and nothing that happened after has ever made sense to me. Her parents had gone to visit relatives in Indiana for the weekend, so it was just the two of us in their creaky old house at the far end of Red Hollow Road. We'd had sleepovers before, but this one felt different the second I stepped inside. The house smelled like old wood and lavender-scented dust. Maggie's room was upstairs, tucked beneath the sloped roof, filled with string lights and posters and half-finished art projects. Everything looked normal, mostly. But I caught her glancing over her shoulder as we climbed the stairs, like she was listening for something. We made popcorn, watched 2 horror movies, and laughed like we always did. Still, I noticed she kept checking her phone, screen tilted away from me. I asked if something was wrong. She just shrugged and said it was a group chat for school. But it was July. School was 2 months away. I didn't press it. I wish I had. By midnight, the lights were off and I was in my sleeping bag beside her bed, staring at the ceiling fan, waiting for sleep that didn't come. I must have dozed off for a while, but something pulled me out of sleep. Soft footsteps in the hallway just beyond Maggie's door. They were slow, deliberate, like someone walking barefoot across old wood. I sat up, ears straining, heart already racing. The steps stopped as suddenly as they'd started. I looked toward Maggie's bed. She hadn't moved. Her back was turned, blanket pulled over her head, breathing slow and even like she was deep asleep. I whispered her name. Once, then again. No response. That's when I noticed it. Her closet door, which had definitely been shut earlier, now stood slightly open. Just an inch, maybe 2, enough to make it feel intentional. I stared at it, trying to convince myself it was just a draft. Maybe the floor had shifted. But the house was still. Too still. I lay back down, blanket pulled to my chin, watching the door from the corner of my eye. No more footsteps, no creaks, just the faint ticking of a wall clock. Then, breathing. Not mine, not Maggie's. This was close, right beside me, low, steady, like someone crouched just inches from my ear, trying not to be heard. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. That breathing was so close I could feel it vibrating through the sleeping bag. Slow, wet exhales like something not quite human was testing how still I could stay. I forced myself to glance sideways, praying to see nothing, and saw nothing. No figure, no outline. But I could still hear it, hovering right over my ear. After what felt like an hour, the sound just stopped, and that's when Maggie sat up. Not slowly, not startled. She just rose from her pillow in one fluid motion, eyes locked on the corner of the room, the one with the closet. She didn't speak. She didn't even look at me. She lay back down just as smoothly and pulled the blanket over her head like it was all part of a routine. I whispered her name again. Still nothing. I sat up, heart hammering, unsure if I was more afraid of waking her or realizing she was already awake. I reached for my phone to check the time, 3:12 a.m., and that's when I saw it. The closet door was now wide open, not cracked, not slightly ajar, wide, and in the back corner, something was crouching. I froze, squinting into the shadows, hoping it was just a pile of clothes or a trick of the light. But the shape was too solid, too still. I stood up slowly, each creak of the floorboard echoing like thunder. I backed toward Maggie's bed and gently touched her shoulder. She stirred, mumbled something I couldn't understand. I leaned in closer. That's when she whispered, "Don't look in the closet." Her voice was tight, trembling. Her hand gripped the blanket like a lifeline. "Maggie, what's in there?" I asked. But she didn't answer, just kept repeating it, softer each time. "Don't look. Don't look." Something about the way she said it made me stop. It wasn't panic, not the kind I felt. It was practiced, controlled, like she already knew what that thing was, and what not to do. I backed away again, never taking my eyes off the open door. The air felt heavier than before, like it didn't want me to move. I sank back into my sleeping bag, arms wrapped around my knees, eyes locked on the thing in the corner. Waiting. Watching. Not approaching. Just waiting. I don't remember falling asleep. At some point, exhaustion must have dragged me under. When I opened my eyes again, morning light was leaking through the curtains, and Maggie was already up, brushing her hair like nothing had happened. The closet door was shut. I sat up slowly, half expecting her to say something, but she didn't. "Did you hear anything weird last night?" I asked. She paused, just for a second, then smiled at me through the mirror. "Nope, just a normal night." Her voice was casual, but something behind her eyes dared me to question it. I didn't. Not until later, when we were alone in the kitchen and her mom had left us to make pancakes. "Maggie, who was in your closet?" She froze mid-flip, spatula hovering over the pan. "You weren't supposed to see it," she said, voice suddenly flat. "It only watches. It doesn't like being noticed." I asked how long it had been there. "Since my 7th birthday," she said. Then she looked at me, dead serious, and added, "It's not mine. It followed someone else home first." I asked who, but she didn't answer, just stared and said, "If it likes you, it might come with you next." I laughed, nervously, tried to play it off like she was messing with me. But her smile didn't come back. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Don't talk about it out loud. It listens." I didn't respond. I just nodded and stirred pancake batter until my hands stopped shaking. I left that afternoon pretending everything was fine, told my parents I had fun, smiled when they asked about the weekend. But that night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about how calm Maggie had been, how her silence felt rehearsed, like she'd been living with that thing for years and learned exactly how not to provoke it. I haven't been back to her house since. We're still friends, kind of. She's changed, quieter, always watching the corners of her room like she's waiting for something. Sometimes she texts me, never long messages, just short ones, always at night. And always the same thing, "Don't look in the closet." Thanks for tuning in to 7:31 a.m. tonight. If you're new here, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next signal.